He was 10 years old when he first started writing letters to the sky. His name was Ion. He wasn't good at sports, didn't talk much, and often sat alone in school. Other children laughed at how quiet he was. Some called him Ghost Boy, because he looked like he didn't belong. He never shouted back. He just smiled sometimes, picked up his books, and walked away. At home, things weren't any better. His mother was always tired, working 2 jobs. His father had left when he was 3. There were no bedtime stories, no birthday balloons, no one waiting when he came home, so he found his peace under the stars. Every night, he would sit on the small roof of their flat, a notebook in his hand, and write letters that began with, "Dear Sky." He wrote about everything, about how he felt invisible, about the teacher who said he was smart but didn't understand why he never smiled, about the kid who pushed him during recess, about how he missed his father though he didn't even remember his face. One cold night, something inside him broke. He had gotten into a fight at school, and when he came home, his mother scolded him without asking why. She was too tired. He didn't blame her, but he felt like no one wanted him. That night, he climbed the roof, tears in his eyes, and wrote a letter that was different. "Dear Sky, if you really are listening, then give me one reason to stay. Just one. Because I'm tired. I'm tired of being ignored. I'm tired of pretending to be strong. I'm not asking for a miracle. Just one sign. If nothing happens by morning, I won't write anymore." He placed the letter on the roof, open, and went to bed without dinner. The next morning, something strange happened. The letter was gone. Not blown away by the wind. It was winter, and the air was still. The paper was simply missing. In its place, under a smooth stone, was a folded note. A small white paper, neatly written in blue ink. It said, "You matter. The sky hears everything. Sometimes, silence means strength. Keep writing." Ion stood there, staring at it. His heart raced. His hands trembled. Who wrote this? It wasn't his mother. She didn't even know about the letters. It wasn't a friend. He didn't have any. He looked around the nearby rooftops. Nothing. No one. Just birds and morning clouds. He read the note again, and again. Something changed in him that day. It felt like maybe, just maybe, someone was watching. Someone cared. He didn't know who. He didn't know why, but it was enough. He went to school that morning and didn't cry, even when 2 boys threw his notebook on the floor. He picked it up, whispered thank you to himself, and quietly walked away. That night, he wrote again, but this time, not out of pain, but out of hope. "Dear Sky, I got your message. I don't know who you are, but thank you. I'll keep writing." For the next several months, Ion wrote every night. And once in a while, there would be a small note waiting in return. Always short, always kind. Sometimes just a sentence. Like "You are stronger than you think," or "Pain means you feel. Feeling means you are alive." He kept them hidden in a small box under his bed, but he never saw who left them. Years passed, Ion grew older. He still didn't have many friends, but he had something even better: words. His diary became thicker, his thoughts deeper. He began understanding things others didn't notice, like the sadness behind a smile, or the way someone's hands shake when they try to act brave. He became the boy who helped others quietly, who listened, who remembered things most forgot. One evening, when he was 17, his mother knocked on his door. Her eyes were tired, but softer than usual. "You still write those letters?" she asked. He looked at her surprised. "You knew. I found one years ago," she said quietly. "Didn't tell you. Didn't want to stop you. They made you stronger." Ion didn't say anything. He just nodded. She stood there for a moment, then turned to leave. That night, he took out all the old notes from under his bed. He hadn't read them in years. His fingers brushed the yellowed paper. Then he saw something that made him freeze. On the back of one note was a symbol, a small blue drawing. It looked like a heart with wings. He didn't remember seeing it before. He flipped through the rest. The same symbol appeared on 3 more notes. Heath searched online. No results. Just before midnight, he whispered to the sky one more time, "Who are you?" He didn't expect a reply, but the next morning, under the same stone on the roof, was a new note, and it said just one thing: "You'll know when the time is right." His heart raced again, not because he was scared, but because deep inside, he knew. Someone was still watching, and they hadn't gone anywhere. He folded the note, looked at the sky, and smiled. But what he didn't know was the person who left that first message had just returned to his life, in a way he never expected, and very soon, everything was going to change. Ion had stopped writing to the sky after that last note. He still believed in it, whatever or whoever the sky was. But now, at 17, life was moving faster. He had school, part-time work at a bookstore, and his diary, which had grown into hundreds of pages. He still wrote every day, just not to the sky anymore. Now he wrote for himself. Pages and pages of thoughts, stories, emotions. He didn't know it, but those words were about to change everything. It all started on an ordinary Thursday. School announced a competition, Young Voices of Hope. Students could submit a short book or essay that shared a message of strength and hope. The winning entry would be published online. Most students ignored it. Ion didn't plan to join either, but his English teacher, Miss Rima, had other ideas. She stopped him after class. Ion, you write better than most people I've met. Why don't you submit something? He hesitated. It's just personal stuff. It's not really a story. Then make it one, she said. Your words can help others, not just you. That night, he stayed up rereading his diaries. His heart raced as he turned the pages. He saw his younger self, scared, broken, and full of questions. Then he saw the shift, those small notes from the sky, the signs of healing, the strength in the silence. It wasn't just his story. It was the journey of anyone who had ever felt invisible. He began editing, cutting, rewriting, shaping his scattered letters into a story. He titled it Hope Core. Because hope, he wrote in the intro, is the quiet voice inside you when everything outside has gone silent. 2 weeks later, he submitted it. He didn't tell anyone, not even his mother. He forgot about it until one afternoon, just before math class. The school speaker buzzed on. Ion Rahim, please report to the principal's office. Whispers broke out. Someone laughed. What did you do? Ion walked there slowly, nervous. But when he opened the door, his principal stood, smiling, and beside her was a man in a suit, holding a printed copy of Hope Core in his hand. Ion, the man said, shaking his hand. My name is Kamran Malik. I'm a publisher. Ion blinked. A publisher. Kamran nodded. Your story has gone viral. We put the entries online for voting. Yours reached over 100,000 views in 2 days. We got emails from readers around the world. We want to publish your book, properly, in print, with your name on it. Ion stood there frozen. He couldn't speak. Kamran smiled again. People need your words, son. Ion finally found his voice. But I'm just a student. That's exactly why it's powerful. That night, he told his mother. She sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the news on his phone. At first she didn't believe it. Then she started crying quietly. You wrote this, she whispered. Ayan nodded. It's beautiful, she said. In the coming weeks, everything changed. His photo appeared in local papers. A radio station called him for an interview. A nearby NGO invited him to speak at a youth conference. And finally, Hope Core was printed. Real pages, a real cover, his name in bold letters. Ion Rahim. At the book launch, he wore a simple black shirt. The crowd was small but warm. When he stepped up to the mic, he felt his legs shake. I used to write letters to the sky, he began, because I didn't think anyone else was listening. The room fell silent. I never planned to share them, but today, I'm glad I did, because maybe someone else, somewhere, is still writing in silence, hoping someone hears. People clapped. Some wiped tears. But as he signed books at the end, a man stood in line, holding a copy, silent. He was older, in his 40s maybe, with a quiet presence. When it was his turn, he didn't speak right away. Then he said, Do you remember the first note you got on your roof? Ion looked up sharply. The man smiled gently. It was me. Time stopped. Ion's hand froze. His chest felt like it had dropped. You what? I lived in the building behind yours. I used to see you every night on the roof. One night, you left a letter and walked away. I don't know why, but I read it. I couldn't ignore it, so I wrote back. Ion stared at him, heart racing. I kept leaving notes, the man said, until we moved. I never forgot you. And when I saw your name in the paper, I knew. Why didn't you ever show yourself? Ion whispered. I wasn't ready. I didn't think I mattered. Now? Ion was crying. You saved me, he said. The man looked down. No, you saved yourself. I just reminded you that you mattered. Ion handed him the book signed without asking the name. Then he added something at the bottom of the page. To the one who answered the sky. As the man walked away, Ion stood there, heart full. But what he didn't know was that this book, this moment, was only the beginning. A quiet revolution had started, and soon, Hope Core would become something no one could stop. After the book launch, Ion's life changed, but inside, he still felt the same. He knew the power of words, but he wanted to do more. One day he saw a poster at the library, volunteer at City Hospital, help patients heal. He thought, maybe he could help people who were hurt not just with words, but with presence. At the hospital, Ion met many people. Some were happy to see visitors, others were angry or silent. One evening, in the mental health ward, he found a boy sitting alone on a bench. His name was Sami. Sami looked lost. His eyes were dark, his shoulders heavy with pain. Ion sat beside him quietly. Sami didn't say anything at first. Days passed, and Ion came every evening. He didn't ask questions. He just sat with Sami, letting the silence speak. Sami began to lean on him, not with words, but with trust. One night Sami finally whispered, I wanted to die. Ion's heart ached. Why? He asked softly. Because I'm alone, Sami said. No one cares. Ion reached into his backpack and pulled out a small notebook. I wrote something once. Maybe it can help. He opened to a page titled Hope Core. It was a part from his book. When the world is quiet and your heart is loud, remember there is always hope at your core. Sami looked at the words and slowly smiled for the first time. Can you write more for me? Ion nodded. He began writing pages of hope, stories of strength, letters not to the sky, but to Sami and others like him. Soon, more patients came to listen. They shared their stories. They cried. They laughed. They healed. But then, just as Ion felt his mission growing, his phone rang. It was his mother. His father had collapsed. At the hospital, Ion sat beside his father's bed. His father's face was pale, but his eyes were strong. Ion held his hand and opened his notebook. I don't know if I can finish this, Ion whispered. His father smiled weakly. You must. For everyone who needs it. Those words became Ion's strength. Every night he wrote beside his father's bed, pages filled with hope, love, and pain. But then one morning, the hospital room was quiet. His father had passed away, heart shattered. But in his father's hand was a small note. Finish the book. Someone out there needs it more than I ever did. Ion clutched the note. He promised to keep going. Yet, days later, the notebook vanished. It had been stolen. Felt lost again. But then, a message came from a stranger online. Your words saved me. That stranger had found the lost pages and shared them quietly. Ion realized his book was already becoming a movement, and this was just the start. Ion felt the weight of loss pressing down on him as he sat in the empty hospital room. His father was gone. The quiet was louder than ever, but he clung to the note his father had left him. Finish the book. Someone out there needs it more than I ever did. He held that promise close like a lifeline. For days, Ion searched everywhere for the missing notebook. It was his heart, his story, and now, it was gone. The notebook that had kept his hope alive had vanished, as if swallowed by the darkness he fought to escape. Without it, he felt like giving up. One evening, he sat on the rooftop staring at the stars, whispering, why now? Why me? But just as his hope was fading, a message blinked on his phone. It was from an unknown number. I have something that belongs to you. The message gave him a tiny spark. Could it be the notebook? Could hope return? He arranged to meet the sender in a quiet park. When he arrived, a young woman stepped forward. Her eyes were gentle but serious. I found this on the bus, she said, handing him a worn notebook. It changed my life. Ion opened the pages. There were his words, his pain, his hope, his story. Tears streamed down his face. He looked up. Thank you. You don't know how much this means. She smiled softly. I don't want thanks. I want you to keep writing. There are others like me who need this. With her encouragement, Ion decided to rewrite and finish Hope Core. Every page carried not only his story, but the stories of those who had reached out to him, the ones who had been touched by his words. The book grew richer, deeper. He started sharing chapters on social media. Slowly, strangers sent him messages, some thanking him, some sharing their own struggles. The movement was spreading like wildfire. One day, a news reporter asked him to talk about the book on live television. The interview was intense. People connected with his honesty, his pain, and his hope. But just as Hope Core was becoming famous, a big publishing house called with an offer. They wanted to make it a global bestseller, but with one condition: remove all mention of his father. Ion felt torn. His father's memory was the heart of the book. Without him, it would lose its soul. He refused. They pulled their offer. It was a hard choice, fame or truth. But Ion knew what mattered most. He would keep Hope Core real, and he would keep fighting. After refusing the big publisher's offer, Ion felt both relieved and scared. His book was growing, but without their help, reaching more people would be harder. Still, he was determined to keep his father's story alive. He believed the truth was more important than fame. One rainy evening, as Ion scrolled through his phone, he received a message from someone he didn't know. The message was simple. Your words saved me when I had nothing left. At first, Ion thought it was a mistake, but more messages followed from different people all over the country. They told stories of pain, hope, and healing because of Hope Core. Then, one message stood out. It was from a man named Zane, who said he found a notebook on a bus last year. The notebook was full of pages about hope and struggle, pages that felt familiar. He had kept the notebook safe and read it over and over when life was hard. He didn't know who wrote it, but it gave him strength to change. Ion's heart raced. Could this be his lost notebook? Zane sent photos of the worn pages, some with handwriting only. Ion recognized. Tears filled Ion's eyes. His words had touched someone deeply, even when he thought they were lost forever. Zane and Ion started talking every day. Zane told stories of how Hope Core had saved his life after losing his job and falling into depression. He said the book gave him courage to try again, to believe again. Inspired by Zane, Ion decided to share his story openly. He posted about the lost notebook and how a stranger found it. The story went viral. People everywhere started talking about Hope Core. Ion realized this was more than a book, it was a movement. People were connecting through shared pain and hope. But with attention came challenges. Some people criticized him. They said he was too young, that his story was too simple. Some online trolls even questioned his father's death. Ion felt hurt, but remembered the boy who wrote letters to the sky. He was stronger now. One night, after reading hundreds of encouraging messages, Ion made a choice. He would not let fear stop him. He announced the launch of Hope Core Circles, free groups across cities where people could come together, share stories, and find hope. The movement was growing. The boy who once wrote to the sky was now helping thousands find their voices. But one question remained: who was the first person to answer his letter? After announcing Hope Corps circles, Ion's life was busier than ever. He traveled to different cities, meeting young people who had read his book or joined his groups. Everywhere he went, he saw the power of hope growing like a wildfire. People shared stories of pain, healing, and strength. Some even cried in his arms, thanking him for giving them a voice. One evening, Ion was invited to appear on a popular news channel. The topic was national grief, recent tragedies that had shaken the country. The host asked Ion to read a passage from Hope Corps that had helped many people cope with loss and sadness. As Ion read live on air, his calm voice carried words of comfort and resilience. Millions watched and listened. After the broadcast, calls and messages poured in. People wanted to know how they could join Hope Corps circles. Schools asked for permission to use the book in classrooms. Hospitals requested copies for patients struggling with depression and anxiety. Even prison authorities reached out, hoping to start reading groups. Ion felt overwhelmed but grateful. His simple story had turned into something much bigger than he ever imagined. However, the bigger the movement grew, the more pressure Ion felt. Some powerful people didn't like the attention he was getting. Rumors spread, and some media started questioning his motives. Was he truly the author? Was his story real? Doubts and criticism tested his faith. One day, a major publishing company returned with a new offer. They wanted to publish Hope Corps worldwide, with full marketing and translations. But there was one condition again: remove all personal stories, especially about his father. They said it was too emotional for a global audience. Ion thought hard. The book was about hope, yes, but also about truth and love. Removing his father's story would break the heart of it all. He said no. Instead, Ion decided to create a movement that didn't depend on big publishers. Hope Corps circles would be free and open to everyone. At the very first large gathering of Hope Corps circle, held in a packed community hall, something unexpected happened. A young woman stood up during the sharing session and said, "I was the one who wrote the first note under your door." Ion's breath caught. The room fell silent. He looked at her in disbelief. She smiled gently. His story, his journey, had come full circle. And Hope Corps was no longer just a book, it was a family. When the young woman said, "I was the one who wrote the first note under your door," the room became still. Ion stared at her, unable to believe it. She smiled softly and introduced herself as Amara, a counselor who had quietly watched over him during his toughest times. She had moved away years ago, but had never forgotten the boy who wrote letters to the sky. Ion felt a flood of emotions: surprise, gratitude, and something like peace. For years, he had wondered who was behind those notes that saved him. Now, here she was, standing in front of him. But the journey was not over. Ion had a big decision to make. The movement had grown beyond his dreams. Hope Corps circles were spreading, and people everywhere were finding comfort and strength in his words. Yet, there were pressures. Publishers wanted to commercialize his story, media wanted more interviews, and some people wanted him to change the message to suit their ideas. One evening, Ion sat alone, thinking deeply. Should he choose fame and money, or stay true to his heart and the story of his father and Amara? Could he handle the challenges that came with being in the spotlight, or would staying quiet help the movement grow stronger? He remembered his father's last words: "Finish the book. Someone out there needs it more than I ever did." And he remembered Amara's gentle notes that showed him hope when he felt alone. Ion stood up with new strength. He decided to refuse the big publishing deals that asked him to change his story. Instead, he would build Hope Corps the way it began, as a movement of honesty, love, and real stories. Together with Amara, he planned to take Hope Corps to schools, hospitals, and communities. They created free support groups where people could share their pain and find healing without judgment or cost. At their first big event, hundreds gathered to listen and share. Ion spoke about courage, hope, and the power of silence. Amara shared how a single note could change a life. As the event ended, a boy in the crowd stood up and spoke quietly. "I want to write a letter to the sky too. Can you help me?" Ion smiled and nodded. He knew the movement was only beginning. Hope Corps was no longer just his story. It belonged to everyone who dared to hope. The moment Amara revealed herself as the one who wrote the first note under Ion's door, everything changed. It was more than a reunion. It was the start of something greater. Together, Ion and Amara stood before hundreds in a bright hall filled with faces eager for hope and healing. They spoke about pain and silence, about the courage to write when the world feels dark. They told their story: the boy who wrote letters to the sky and the woman who answered in kindness. The audience listened, some with tears, some with hopeful smiles. Soon, Hope Corps was no longer just a book or a small group. It was a movement that touched lives across cities, countries, and continents. Schools began teaching its lessons. Hospitals used it to help patients heal. Prisons started reading circles where inmates found new purpose. Letters poured in from children, adults, even elderly people, sharing how Hope Corps gave them strength. When they thought all was lost, one day, Ion received a letter unlike any other. It was from a small village far away, where internet barely worked. A boy had written to the sky, just like Ion once did. But this boy had addressed his letter to the founder of Hope Corps. The boy's words were simple but full of hope, reminding Ion why his journey mattered. Ion smiled, feeling the movement come full circle. He understood that hope is not just one person's story, it is the light that lives in every heart, waiting to be shared. And as the sun set on that hopeful day, Ion knew the sky was still listening. So were millions of voices now joined together. The boy who once felt invisible had helped create a world where no one had to be silent. A movement was born, and it was just the beginning.